Welcome to Chats with Changemakers, the Northeast podcast for people making the world a better place. Hi, and welcome to Chats with Changemakers. I'm your host, Kate Duffy. In this episode, I interviewed Dan Arasmus from Cornerstone Psychology CIC. Dan set up Cornerstone Psychology CIC in July 24, but officially launched it in January. He's already hit the road running and is very busy providing quality psychological support through a person-centric and evidence-based approach. Dan provides both workplace neurodiversity services, coaching, training, as well as workplace assessments. And all of this is with accessibility at the heart of his social enterprise. So here's my interview with Dan. Hi, everybody, and today I'm going to be talking to Dan Arasmus from Cornerstone Psychology CIC. So, Dan, tell us a little bit about your CIC.
Sure. So Cornerstone, I'll start myself.
Okay.
My passion is people,
Okay.
and it always has been. And that led me to doing a BSc in psychology at Newcastle University quite a while ago now. And then I've always been an advocate of volunteering and working with charities. So that led me into the not-for-profit sector after university. Moved out to South Africa to manage a volunteer program out there. And I could see these organizational issues creeping in, and they were impacting staff, motivation, day-to-day operations, and ultimately the beneficiaries that we were working with. And I could see the issues. I had some idea of the psychology behind it, but I didn't have those skills or that training to address those practically or effectively. So I moved back to the UK and I did a master's in occupational and organizational psychology. So the psychology of work, businesses, and everything in between. And then that's when I actually met UK, when you gave me an opportunity with Junction, which I'll always be grateful for. And I did some work within the not-for-profit sector and then fell into formal business psychologist roles, which I've been in ever since. And life happens, and it led me to the point of leaving the corporate world and then starting Cornerstone Psychology CIC. And even the name Cornerstone, it sort of stems from usually that first brick that's laid in a building that sets that integrity and structure. And being a psychologist, the work I do is always based on evidence and data. And when you transfer that to a social enterprise, it allows me then to produce social impact that can be effective, but then also measured really well because it's baked into how I work already, which is always helpful. I set the kick up, or I registered the kick last July, but there's so much clinical governance to get in place before then. So engaged a HCPC registered occupational psychologist as a supervisor, insurance and all those fun things. And then from January, went all in. And there's been such a demand and need for accessible services. So Cornerstone's three key values, which I make decisions around day to day, are accessibility. So that could be financial accessibility, social accessibility, and then cognitive accessibility. So specializing in neurodiversity in the workplace, as I'm sure you've seen working with the various organizations you do, there's such a variety of neurotypes and cognitive profiles that all bring their own strengths and preferences and challenges in some case. And yeah, making the services accessible to those who otherwise wouldn't be able to access them, or you can appreciate there's a massive waiting list for neurodiversity related services more generally. So
Yeah, for sure.
that accessibility is so important.
It's amazing, Dan. And how long ago is it that we worked together now?
2020.
Okay,
5 years ago.
so a good while ago. And I remember you saying back then that like your big ambition going forwards this was that you wanted to run this as like a social venture. You wanted to be making a difference, be evidence-based, and here you are. Dan is on the case. So yeah, really interesting. So I kind of know the story now that led you to set up this organization. how's that process been for you so far? I know it's really early days, but how's that been? Have you enjoyed it?
Yeah, I think I've enjoyed the challenge. Like
Mhm,
I'm always up for a challenge, and I yeah, through my work, I found out I was neurodivergent myself. So
mhm,
as a neurodivergent individual setting up a business, there's certain tasks that really interest and engage me, and there's certain tasks that absolutely do not. And what I've done, and a really good piece of advice, because I had some coaching prior to making the shift from full-time employment into running their social enterprise, and they said create that scaffolding and structure in those areas that either don't come naturally or you don't find that interesting, to allow you to focus your relatively limited daily energy on the tasks that you really do enjoy and are passionate
mhm,
about. And I really ran with that. And those aspects of setting up the business that I'm not naturally strong in or don't find interesting, I've fortunately been able to delegate and sort of allow others to cover that, and that frees me up to deliver the work I love delivering. Yeah.
amazing. So tell us a little bit more then about the actual service that you're delivering, the products and services that you set up your organization to deliver.
Sure. So specializing in neurodiversity in the workplace as adults, 18 plus, either in employment, seeking employment, or looking to move between job roles or sectors or industries. And our key or core services are workplace needs assessments.
Mhm,
So it's an assessment of the individual's job role, working environment, and then the impact that their neurodiversity has on those factors and on that environment or the environment on them. And then we can recommend reasonable adjustments around that information that we gather from that assessment. And that can be a bit of a springboard for other services. So I do ADHD and autism screening assessments. So they're not formal diagnoses,
mhm.
but they are evidence-based and validated tools that we use to provide the pre-diagnostic insight. And it can help individuals with sort of self-awareness, awareness of the cognitive profile, but then also guide a support plan or interventions in the workplace. And then we also do neurodiversity strategy coaching. So it could be, say, 6 1-hour sessions working with an individual around specific challenges they might have at work or in a voluntary role, which has been something that's come up recently. And then we can co-create strategies and create that space for them to work through and think about their own thinking and how they can sort of use those strategies day to day. And then neurodiversity awareness training as well. So that could be to organizations, community groups, private companies, whoever would like to engage with that. But I'm currently working on making that as accessible as possible. So watch the space, and there'll be something on
Amazing.
the horizon for sure.
Ah, awesome. So tell us then about the business model. So I get what you're doing, I get why you're doing it. How is this going to be funded, and is it something that's hopefully or is already creating an income for you, or is this something that sits sort of externally to your own income?
Yeah, so currently, I think making that transition, I was quite proactive and having to pay the bills and
Mhm.
everything else, of course. And I do some self-employed work on the side, so whether that's university related or other sort of business psychology related jobs. And then fortunately the kick has been really busy. There's been a really big demand. So it's all sort of traded income at the
Mhm.
moment, and that's great because it allows me to then evidence the impact for when I do make grant applications going forward, which are a whole conversation in themselves.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's been only traded income currently, which is great.
Amazing. So let's fast forward then. Let's go to the year 2035. What's in store for you guys? What do you have a big picture vision, or are you sort of more organically being led by what happens as you go?
Definitely, of course, we've been strategizing, and I think Junction ran a really great session not so long ago, which was really helpful in that, especially at this point in the organization. But what I would like to do is make these services, this provision, this information, um, as accessible to as many people as possible. So the model we use currently is predominantly remote because then the end user sort of sees that saving and financially it makes it more accessible. But doing a lot of local work in person as well.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think I mean, yeah, shooting for the sky, like going international would be amazing.
Cool.
I'm from South Africa originally, so they are a good amount of years behind in terms of neurodiversity awareness and progression on that side. So doing a bit of work out there would be great. But for the next few years, being local has been amazing and working in the community I live in, which is great.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Interesting. All exciting stuff then. So, is there anything that you know now that you wish you'd have known at the start of your journey?
Um, it's fun, but it's not easy. That's for sure. So the jump from uh, working in a structured, rigid environment
Mm-hmm.
of the full-time employment as an employee brings its own stresses, and
Mm-hmm.
then shifting into this brings very different stresses, but I know they're my own, and I think that's the difference is I can then see them as a challenge to be overcome rather than something I don't have autonomy over,
Mm-hmm.
which is something I've struggled with previously. Uh, but yeah, I think given the work I did, especially with yourself back 2020, had a reasonable idea of what it was going to entail.
Yeah.
But I'm yeah not getting as much sleep because I'm a lot busier. But equally, I'm able to be flexible and I can go for a run in the middle of the day if I want to. Or I had
Yeah.
an amazing meeting on Long Sands Beach this morning, which was just so different to
Yeah.
what I would be doing usually. So
Yeah.
taking it day by day and just
Welcome,
embracing,
welcome to the world of the unemployable. I think as soon as you've crossed
indeed.
that threshold into self-employment, I think it takes a very special organization to tempt you back into employment afterwards. So yeah, totally agree. I think as well for people who are neurodivergent, I think that this is almost what attracts us to self-employment, isn't it?
Mm.
That it's that depending on your energy levels, depending on what lights you up in terms of the stuff that's easy for you to do because you love it versus the stuff that's more challenging and it's really hard to stay focused on. It's up to you how you plan your day. It isn't
Yeah.
that there is this clock in, clock out, work as hard as you can for sort of 7.5 hours. Lucky if you get a half-hour break. That is it. You know, I think anyone that I've spoken to as well that's both some sort of entrepreneur or they're running their own organization and is ADHD or they have autism or are not neurotypical, it is the part that holds them in self-employment. It's that freedom that comes with it, as well as the impact that they're then wanting to make. I think it's the perfect match. So really interesting to hear what you're up to within your social enterprise. We'll be sharing all of your links with everybody after this, so hopefully people will be able to connect with you in that way. Is there anything else? You know, you have an audience, you've got a platform at this point. Is there anything that anybody could be doing who's listening to support you in your journey to getting going?
Yeah, I mean, I'm quite active on LinkedIn, so please feel free, anyone listening,
Mm-hmm.
to connect with me there. And I'm always up for a coffee and a chat. So if anyone would like to discuss or find out more, please get in contact because I welcome that for sure.
Perfect. Well, Dan, it's been really lovely speaking to you and catching up. And yeah, we look forward to seeing what the next 5 years has on board for you. So thank you ever so much for your time today.
Thanks, Kate.
Dan is super early in his journey, but is already finding his feet and his audience. And one thing I think that's really interesting about Dan's approach is his steadfast commitment to quality. His aim is to be providing quality psychological support in the workplace. And this means up-to-date qualifications, it means certificates, insurance partners, the right kind of credibility that means that he's offering something more than just good intentions. There is real evidence-based work behind him. And it's this USP that is setting him apart from his competitors. So he's been live now for about 4 months and is already hitting all of his income generating targets with no need for grants at this time at all. And I think there's real strength in this approach of really focusing on income generation, which has allowed him to hit that sustainability point much quicker than perhaps he could have done had he gone down the grant application route. So I know Dan is really keen to connect with people, so I do hope that you do connect with him after this. And don't forget to subscribe to Chats with Changemakers for more brilliant interviews just like this one. Catch you next time. Thank you for joining today's chat. If you'd like to be featured on the next series, please email hello@junctionpoint.co.uk. Speak to you soon.